how my journey began. It's graduation time. Family is very important to me, including my puppies. The Marine Corps played a huge role in my life and allowed me to be ambitious, inspiring, a mentor, and achieve all of my goals. As a financial expert, I've received multiple awards, done various events as a guest speaker all over the U.S. with my platform of creating healthy financial habits, along with having my own business, all leading up to my show. Come along for the journey.
Hello, Gems, and welcome. For the month of February, our theme continues to be Black History Month and focusing on civil unrest or our justice system and Black love. Our next episodes will be a two-part segment. In part one, we'll be discussing a real case concerning a wrongful arrest of a Black man in Lemon Grove, California. Our guest will be discussing her influence and involvement in the case. Before we speak with her, here are a few statistics on wrongful arrest. The United States has been the subject of more wrongful convictions than any country in the world. Let that sink in a bit. The rate of wrongful convictions in the United States is estimated to be somewhere between 2% and 10%. Now, that may sound like a low number, but when you applied it to an estimated prison population that is 2.3 million, the numbers become more staggering at 2,300,000 wrongful convictions. Among unarmed victims, Black people are killed 3 times the rate of white people. Racial profiling affects thousands of Black Americans every day by using ethnicity for wrongful police stops, seizures, arrests, and killings. Let's take a look at a news clip explaining some of the details of the case we will be discussing today.
A big show of support for an African-American man accused of evading police. Family and friends showed up once again to the El Cajon courthouse to stand behind Torrey Robinson. He was facing a felony charge for reckless evading. And 10 News anchor Robert Santos explains how all that changed this morning and how his family is reacting.
The original bail was set for $50,000, which was dropped to $35,000. And then the other day, yesterday rather, it was dropped to $0. So he was sitting in jail for 17 days for the bail to just be dropped to 0.
Torrey Robinson exited the courthouse with his friends and relatives waiting to show their support for him. They continue to stand behind him after he was accused of evading authorities December 26th. Deputies had tried to pull him over for a faulty taillight, but Robinson reportedly drove for about 3 blocks before he finally stopped. His defense attorney told 10 News, in the wake of recent tragedies involving Black men and law enforcement, Robinson wanted to get to a well-lit gas station. Today, the district attorney's office reduced what was a felony charge for reckless evading to a misdemeanor.
I am angry because of the fact he is a young man who has no law enforcement. He's not a gang member. He has not a record, and yet and still he's been jeopardized. His job, his life.
We are going to fight this the whole way. It's not good enough because it's unjust, and Black people in this country deserve better.
Robinson is a special education teacher and a specialist at La Mesa Parkway Middle School and a manager at Family Dollar. He's due back in court February 9th.
Ooh, wow. I remember watching this on the local San Diego news. Watching the clip takes you right back to that time. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, for today's guest. She was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She was inspired to pursue a degree in her field of study by her parents and summer reading along with mentors she met along the way, including Dr. Shirley Webner, California Secretary of State. She is part of the Black Lives Matter at School for Iowa and the National Steering Committee for Black Lives Matter at School. She is a PhD candidate for Sociology of Education and holds certificates in African American Studies and Digital Humanities. She is completing her PhD dissertation on mediated Black girlhoods at the University of Iowa. Gems, welcome PhD candidate Lisa Covington to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jewel. Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. This is a wonderful topic. It's not often that somebody is this close to a case and, being a part of that. So definitely want to jump right in. So first and foremost, tell us, how did you get started in this specific field of study?
I think most of that came from mentorship from Dr. Shirley Weber. At the time, she was the chair of Africana Studies at San Diego State University. And she just always had a lot of fantastic wisdom around understanding the power of community and engaging with the community while also being in academia. And so being able to be part of both worlds in order to improve Black communities was something that I learned as a result of my mentorship with her. And and that really just allowed for me to make sure I didn't separate my life in school and at the university from the community.
Absolutely. And I know one of the key things, I'm knowing the power of community engagement, as well as leveraging those relationships in the community, is also key to what it is that you do. Very, very good things to be involved with. So you had your first big case about 5 years ago when we both lived in California. That's where I met Lisa. I've known Lisa for a while now, you guys. So if you could walk us through this case and how you got involved.
Yeah, so the case in California is in reference to a young Black man who was driving during the evening in Lemon Grove, and he was followed by a police officer for a few blocks, and the sirens came on. He pulled over when he was at a well-lit area, and when he got there, he was met with other officers arriving at the scene, as well as the initial officer who pulled him over. And so he was racially profiled and unjustly arrested at this well lit area. He had guns drawn on him, about 10 to 12 guns drawn on him, where he ultimately was arrested for felony evasion of police officers and was incarcerated for 18 to 19 days in San Diego County facilities. And so it was initially said that, oh, he was pulled over because he was evading police officers, or he was arrested because he was evading police officers. And later that also included them saying he had a faulty tail light, the police. So
Absolutely. So, Gems, I want to just kind of further let you know some of the details, not details, but just to give it a little bit more meat so you understand. So, a lot of times in African American culture, when you're raised Black, you need to pull over in a well-lit environment. Pulling over on a dark road, pulling over where there's just no lights or it's dimly lit is not something that we're taught to do. So when the police officers and the police report said he was evading police, this is why, we had more than one cop car following him, because we didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he was fleeing the state, he was trying to flee the country. No, he was trying to get to a well-lit place so he can pull over for his safety. So that's really, really huge when you look at these wrongful arrests and these convictions, especially dealing with the Black community. The fact that they had all of these cop cars, guns drawn on him, and he was forced to get out of the car, walk backwards to a vicious barking dog, as if he was a murderer on the loose from another country or even another state, was just wrong in so many ways. I know Lisa told you this, but he wasn't immediately told why he was pulled over. Those facts didn't come out to him. And by facts, I mean that what was in the report, not necessarily what would happen. But it wasn't come out till much later. And that's kind of how the case started for this young Black man, just in the middle of the night, going home, minding his own business. So Lisa, how did you hear about this case? How did you eventually get involved with this case?
I got involved because his father actually contacted me. We are friends, and so when he talked to his son, he just said, "What do you want me to do?" And all he said was, "Just call Lisa." So
Absolutely. And I'm always telling my gyms, it's the power of connections. It's the power of building those community connections, those friendships, those partnerships. So when you find yourself in the bind, you don't have to think, who should I call? Whose number do I have? Whose number do I know? Who do I know? And this simply, in those situations, he just simply said, call Lisa, and it was done. What were the first key steps? Of course, after speaking with the father and learning everything, the details, I'm pretty sure it happened quick. Those first steps that needed to be done once you took the case.
so the main thing was finding out what the charges were and how to get him out of jail. That was the main thing because the charges were not initially provided when he was arrested. That came about 5 days later, which is pretty common when there are arrests over the weekend. So those were the two main things, and also making sure that his daughter was taken care of because he is a single parent, and that was something that was really important as well. Um, Other things include just getting his car out of impound if it was possible, because those costs add up pretty quickly. Um, it was about $200 a day to have that in there. Ultimately, the owner of the vehicle had to be the one to get the car out. So I was not able to get it out. His father was not either. And so over the course of 18 to 19 days, that's over $3,000. So it was definitely a lot to consider, but also just things move so quickly, like you said, and it did. And so getting him out was the priority.
Absolutely. And these are some of the things that, we don't think about because in our day to day, just living, we don't think, what if my car was impounded? How much does that cost? And you have to immediately think, it happened over the weekend. So immediately 5 days there, 2 times 5 is already at $1,000 over the weekend, just before you finally get the call and you figure out. And that's how these days and this time being behind the jail or in the jail behind the bars, I was trying to say, kind of add up. And so, like she said, 19 days, over $3,800, and $200 a day is generous. If you've ever known someone that had your car impounded, $200 literally on the lighter side. I've seen it go up to high as $400 a day. So we're talking way almost up to the $10,000 mark if you're even in for the same amount of time that he is. And like she said, and I'm just reiterating this because I want to bring these points home, the only person that could get his car out was him. And he was behind bars. So let's just say they had the money. They had, let's say, for 5 days, they had $1,000 to get it out. They couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. Nobody else could do it except for him. And that's kind of how this case, you can see how the financial burden on the family, on friends, slowly starts to involve it. It snowballs, it snowballs, and it snowballs. So let's keep it moving. Let's talk about the power of presence in numbers. When you went to the first court meeting, because I definitely want people to understand and hear this. What happened when you went to his first court date?
So we made sure that Black organizations throughout the area knew about what was happening with him as a victim of police brutality, and also, excuse me, and also just as a Black male being racially profiled. And so many organizations were alerted about what was happening and informed of his court date, the first court date. And so we were able to pack the courtroom and have rallies outside of the courthouse that were peaceful, and people had signs of support so that there would be a visible understanding of what was going on inside the courthouse. And the judge responded by asking, why are all these people here? Because generally courtrooms have small areas for people to observe, and we filled the entire area. And the bailiff informed him of which person it was in regards to, and that the media was also present. And the judge said, well, he needs to come first. And as a sociologist, it's also important for me to say that this is not only about this one victim, or really survivor of these encounters. This is connected to other Black men who are also unjustly arrested for a variety of reasons. It's not just about one person. And I say that because as soon as we were able to see him first, there was another Black man behind him and another behind them. And it continued. And they didn't have the support of the news, the support of people filling the courtrooms, because a lot of their cases are unknown.
Right. And thank you for sharing that, because people need to understand that. I talk about the power of numbers, the power of large numbers, the power of presence. And that's what happened in this case. You didn't just show up, just you and the father. You showed up with the community inside and outside. And that tells the community at large, it tells the court, it tells the judge, hey, we mean business. You know, we didn't just come here just to sit behind, you know, the chairs and just listen. We came to show our presence. We came to show we're here, and we want our voices to be shown and heard. A lot of times in these situations, and we've seen countless and countless of these cases across the nation, where, like you said, they go into these courtrooms and they don't have adequate representation. They don't have, and by a crowd, you don't need thousands, you can, but just enough so people say, why are they here? Who are they? Okay, you know what? Let them go first, because the judge knew the longer the media was in there, the longer these organizations and these groups, various ones from all over San Diego, showed their support, the more people are going to be watching him or her as the judge and how they dealt with these other cases. So it's easier for the judge to say, just do it first, get them out the way. So I'm always careful to tell my gyms, be involved in your community. I don't care what it is, but there's a town hall, go to them. If you hear about something on the news, get involved. Again, these were peaceful rallies. These were peaceful protests. There were no hate speeches. There were nothing that would incite any type of crowd rage or any type of harm or dangerous acts in the community. And sometimes your visibility is stronger than any word that you can say. So getting back to the case, again, 19 days behind bars, all of this was going on, the community involvement. I want to talk to you about the community involvement. How were you able to kind of connect with them to kind of raise the funding for the impounding and just to kind of get this word out there?
Mm-hmm. So the relationships that I have with organizations were really important in this regard, because I was able to show up to the regular meetings, inform folks about what was happening. People know my name, they know my face, they're familiar with who I am. And so there was already validity in what I was presenting. And I think that made a big difference. And so folks had questions, they were able to ask me. They were able to inquire about where to donate money to and how to support. You know, some folks feel like support was through a rally. Some people rather donate money. And, you know, capacity varies based on different people's interests and abilities. And so all of that was welcome as well.
Yes, yes. Getting the community involved. You hit the nail on the head with a lot of those, because not everyone's able to give a financial charitable gift. But like you said, their involvement could be attending support groups. It could be, hey, does his daughter need something to eat? Does the daughter need this? Does the family, need a meal? Not to saying that they did, but it's just, what else can I do? And leveraging all of those relationships that she has, because she was involved in her community, in the business organizations, and all these organizations. What I always tell my gyms to do: pick at least 2 to 3 of your favorite ones and get involved. And you can now see how that will help when you need it most. So what was the final outcome of the case?
So ultimately, after those 19 days, the reason that he was able to be released was because the bail was dropped significantly and he was able to afford to get out of jail. And so I think that's the first piece. And the felonious charge was dropped to a misdemeanor. And that also made a big difference as far as the case was concerned, because it was no longer focused only on the evasion of police officers, but other charges that were added. So like traffic infractions and things of that nature, which were ultimately dismissed. And the challenge, though, is that the amount of time between the initial arrest, and the case that I'm referring to ultimately that was dismissed, it was about 5 months.
Yeah.
5 to 6 months. And so that's an extreme amount of time, and your life is impacted outside of the courtroom as well. So, loss of income, not being able to work because of a pending felony charge, all of those things make a difference in how one's life is impacted. So that's something that is often misunderstood, because some people say, oh, well, it's going to court, that's a win. And it's not completely.
And definitely some key things that we often forget, because the news shows it and then that's it. You're lucky if you hear about it the next day. If you're not involved, you go back to your scheduled programming, you go back to whatever it is that you've been doing. But behind the scenes, like you said, 5 to 6 months. We've gone through the pandemic now, and we know what the impact of not having an income is, some of us for a year. But think about if it hit you, boom, right now, 5 to 6 months, no income. Some of us, if you were to be incarcerated, you'd get evicted some of those times. So you're coming back not only to no car, no home. If you had, again, he was a single parent, you need to find someone else to take care of the parent. You have all of these things. You haven't paid bills in 5 or 6 months. They don't know what's going on, making sure that they know, hey, they didn't just not pay, but now you're talking to your cable company, you're talking to your heating, your gas, your light, to say, hey, all of these charges, I wasn't able to pay. You're talking through all of these aspects and intricate details of your life, just to kind of get back to your normal, trying to get back to your balance. And that takes so much time. It's stressful. It's definitely beyond stressful. It's just the impact that it has on your mind, the impact that it has on your life, because you don't have a job and people are looking at you like you're a felon, and you're not. And it's not until you get the word to them, because again, it's not like the news comes back 6 months later and says, remember that case way back in the summertime? Well, this is how it ended. They don't do that. Life goes on. So it's up for that individual to kind of unravel all those things and say, this is what happened. This is not, I'm not a felon. I'm able to work. I'm not this. The charges got dropped from this and there. So, wow, the impact that one wrongful conviction has on someone's life. I think we definitely forget just how many other lives it touches in between those, the time of the charge and the time, that it kind of comes to, I won't say an end, because it's always ongoing. It takes so much time to get your life back together. Do you know if the family continues to fight the wrongful misdemeanor charge or any of those other things?
Yeah, so that was ultimately dismissed, but the result after that dismissal was the family did attain an attorney to sue the county. And that is important to note as well, because after kind of becoming familiar with the case and what was going on, the attorney dropped him as a client because he didn't think that they could win.
Wow.
And so that was huge, right? Because a lot of times people say, "Oh, knowing your rights is really important." And it is, but knowing your rights can make you vulnerable in different ways, because he did all of the right things, and he just happened to be a 6'5" Black male, and that impacts how people view him, particularly law enforcement in this case. And the attorney also thought perhaps that perception in the courtroom would not be helpful either.
Wow. Again, the things that we don't think. You think once you get an attorney that you're going to be represented. But when you have an attorney who says, "Nah, I just don't think so," because of their own prejudices. Because if you put that aside, you do your job and say, let me do the best that I can for this case. Not, well, I think the same thing, and, good luck to you, but I'm not going to take it. And to Lisa's, speaking, that happens more often than what we think. Again, we just don't hear about it. Unless you're involved in these cases, you may sit back and say, well, wonder what happened to that case here. Wonder what happened there. Often this is what happens. This is one of the times where maybe a lawyer may not think that they're able to take the case. Maybe the family's not able to pay the attorney because funding, I do finances. That's also key. Don't ever think that these lawyers do pro bono. No, sometimes they don't. And that's definitely huge in this case. So Lisa, how is being involved in this case a defining moment in continuing to pursue your career and your studies?
I think that this moment was just really important in my own life. And I think just mostly continuing to be involved and be aware of what's happening, but also know that if this happens to someone that I know, or this another person that I'm familiar with, it could happen to me. And so it can happen to anyone who looks like me. And that's something that is important to realize. Um, I think that ultimately I'm encouraged to continue teaching students about the reasons behind why things like this case happen, bringing people into the classroom, because I was teaching at San Diego State at the time, and he did come to my classroom because they saw the paper, they saw the news, and they were able to actually talk directly to him. And so I think a lot of times those things can be lost if you're not involved. And also, the world is the best classroom for students. And so that really allowed for them to interact with him, hear his version, ask questions that were very relevant. Well, why were you in jail? What is the reason behind that? So people can just be arrested, and if they can't afford it, they end up staying. Like, these realizations, similar to Khalif Browder in New York, that was something that happened to him, and that ultimately resulted in his demise because of that incarceration. And so being able to provide this as an example of how society can operate for some people is really important.
Absolutely. Education, education, teaching, because often people just don't know what they don't know. And again, if your only education is that one less than 2-minute clip, then you're not getting all of the pieces, you're not getting all of the information. So kudos to you for being encouraged and sticking to what you believe to be a great source of teaching the world. I love that when you said the world is the best teaching room. I definitely remember this case while living in California and being part of one of the organizations supporting Lisa, the family, and the community in this case. So it's something that she was definitely closer to the case than I was, but definitely brings back where I was and what I was doing while this case was unfolding. So gems, it's that time. Your financial gems for today are having an emergency fund. We see how in any situation, not just this one, but having an emergency fund is definitely helpful. Make sure people in your circle are saving the same way you are, because you never know when you're going to need them, calling them for help. Save 10% of everything you earn. You never know when you're going to need it. Have at least 2 bank accounts, one for bills and day-to-day spending, and another for saving. Most importantly, invest in businesses that you believe in. It is our custom on the show to ask every guest to provide their favorite inspirational quote. So Lisa, what is your inspirational quote that you would like to share with us today?
I don't know if this will be viewed as inspirational to other people.
Yeah.
But this is definitely an inspirational quote for me. W.B. Du Bois said, "A system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect."
Absolutely. And that can be viewed as inspirational. It also can be viewed as something to think about. Something for everyone to think about. Do I have the same rights as the next person? Are we all equally afforded the same opportunities here in America? So definitely that's inspiring. Lisa, thank you for your friendship, your financial gems, being a guest on the show, and being part of the journey today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jewel.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, gems, creating healthy financial habits. It's a lifelong commitment. Remember, without change, there'd be no butterflies. Changing habits, changing lives, and changing futures are all up to you. Till next time, take care of yourself and each other.